The wind that morning had a bite to it. The kind of cold that wrapped around your bones and made even the proudest men pull their coats tighter. Cars rushed by like they always did, faces behind tinted glass, sealed away from the world outside. On the edge of the sidewalk, near a worn-out lamppost, sat a man most people never noticed. His coat was torn at the elbows, his hands wrapped in mismatched gloves, and his sign, made from an old cereal box, read only, "Please. Anything helps." His name was Amir. To most, he was just another beggar. To a few, he was the man they avoided eye contact with when waiting for the signal to turn green. He didn't shout. He didn't chase people down or hold his cup out. He just sat there day after day, quietly watching the world pass him by. Most days, not a single coin clinked into his cup. People walked faster when they saw him. Some crossed the street. Others just looked through him like he wasn't even there. Amir had long since stopped hoping for kindness. But that morning, something was different. A sleek black car rolled to a stop just a few feet away. It wasn't like the others. This one didn't speed off when the light turned green. It idled there, engine humming low, windows dark. Amir glanced up briefly, then looked away. Rich people didn't notice men like him. Why would they? But then the door opened. A polished shoe hit the pavement first. Then another. The man who stepped out was tall, clean-shaven, dressed in a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than Amir had seen in years. The man had a certain way of walking, slow, deliberate. Like every step he took mattered. He didn't look rushed. He didn't look annoyed. He just looked. He stopped directly in front of Amir. At first, Amir didn't say anything. He lowered his eyes, heart pounding slightly, unsure what was about to happen. Was this man going to yell at him for sitting near his car? Or maybe toss a coin like a king feeding pigeons in the park? But then the man did something unexpected. He crouched, not sat, not leaned. He crouched down until he was level with Amir, knees bent in that pressed suit, ignoring the dirt, the sidewalk grime, the looks from passers-by. His eyes weren't cold. They weren't pitying either. They were searching. "What's your name?" the man asked, voice calm, steady. Amir blinked. No one had asked him that in a long time. Not genuinely. Not with any interest in hearing the answer. "Amir," he said quietly. The man nodded. "Amir. I'm Daniel." There was a pause. People were beginning to notice. Some slowed their steps. Others stared from a distance. After all, it wasn't every day you saw someone like Daniel talking to someone like Amir. Daniel reached into his coat pocket. Not for his wallet, not for a pen, not for a phone. He pulled out something else. A small, folded piece of paper. It looked worn, like it had been carried around for a long time. "I want to tell you something," Daniel said. "Something my father once told me when I was in a place not so different from where you are now." That caught Amir off guard. He looked at Daniel again, really looked this time. The suit, the polished shoes, the confidence. He didn't seem like someone who'd ever gone hungry or slept outside. Daniel unfolded the paper and showed it to Amir. There were words written on it in faded ink, underlined in parts, circled in others. Quote, "A list." Amir couldn't quite tell. But before he could read it, Daniel smiled and folded it back up. "Not yet," he said gently. "But I promise you these words changed my life. And if you let them, they can change yours too." Amir didn't know what to say. No one had ever spoken to him like this. Not with judgment, not with pity, but with respect. Like he mattered. Like he was more than the label the world had slapped on him. "You're not invisible, Amir," Daniel continued. "You're not forgotten. And you're definitely not finished." A gust of wind blew through the street, rustling the edge of Amir's sign. Daniel stood up slowly, brushing the dirt from his slacks without a hint of annoyance. He reached into his coat again, this time pulling out something else. A small business card, simple, elegant. "Come see me," he said, placing it gently on top of Amir's sign. "Tomorrow, 9 a.m. I'll be waiting." And just like that, Daniel turned and walked back to his car. He didn't wait for thanks. He didn't glance back. The door shut softly, the engine revved once, and then the black car disappeared into the morning traffic. Amir sat there stunned. He looked down at the card. It had a name, Daniel Whitmore. A company he didn't recognize. An address downtown. Was it a joke? Was it real? And what was written on that folded paper? He wanted to laugh, but instead something else stirred inside him. Something small. Something quiet. But powerful. Oh, it had been so long since he'd felt it. He barely recognized the feeling. People continued walking past, as they always did. But Amir didn't notice them anymore. He was still staring at that card. At the place where the man had stood. At the memory of the voice that had said, "You're not invisible." And for the first time in years he believed it. What Amir didn't know, what no one on that sidewalk knew, was that this single moment, this one conversation between a man with everything and a man with nothing, was about to ripple out in ways neither of them could imagine. Because what Daniel was about to show him wasn't just about second chances. It was about purpose. And the message Daniel carried. It wasn't just meant for Amir. It was meant for all of us. But that comes next. That night, Amir couldn't sleep. He didn't even try. The cold didn't bother him like it usually did, and the noise of the city, the sirens, the honks, the mutters of other people trying to survive, faded into a low hum in the background. His eyes stayed on that card, still clenched in his hand like it might vanish if he looked away for even a second. Daniel Whitmore. The name sounded familiar. Maybe he'd seen it on a billboard, or maybe it was just the kind of name that felt important. But what haunted Amir most wasn't the name or even the invitation. It was the way Daniel had looked at him. Not with pity, not with disgust, but with recognition. Morning came slowly. The sun didn't rise so much as it peeled back the night, inch by inch. Amir sat up, bones stiff, back aching. His hands were numb, but he checked his pocket. The card was still there. That small piece of paper felt heavier than it should. He looked around at the others curled up nearby. Familiar faces he saw every day, fellow ghosts in the city. For a moment, he considered telling one of them what had happened. But something stopped him. This felt private. Like a door had opened, and he wasn't sure yet if he was brave enough to walk through it. He found a cracked mirror in a broken window and stared at himself. His beard was patchy, face tired, skin rough. He hadn't seen his own eyes this clearly in a long time. Could someone like him really walk into a place like the one printed on that card? Could he really stand in front of someone like Daniel Whitmore and not feel like an imposter? But the man's words echoed in his mind. You're not invisible. You're not finished. By 8:30 he was already near the address. He had walked the whole way, weaving through crowds of people who didn't notice him, just like always. The building was tall, too clean, too bright. The glass sparkled and a uniformed doorman stood outside, nodding politely at people as they passed. Amir hesitated across the street, heart hammering, palms sweaty. This wasn't his world. He didn't belong here. He almost turned around. Almost. But then he remembered Daniel crouching in front of him. Remembered the folded paper and the calm voice. And slowly, Amir stepped off the curb and crossed the street. When he reached the front door, the doorman looked at him for a second, longer than most people did. But instead of stopping him, the man surprised him with a quiet nod and opened the door without a word. Inside it was like another planet. Marble floors, soft lights, the smell of fresh coffee and expensive cologne. Amir kept his eyes low, not wanting to meet the stares he imagined were coming from every corner of the lobby. But when he reached the front desk, the receptionist gave him a kind smile. "Are you Mr. Amir?" she asked. He blinked. "Yes, I think so." She stood and motioned to an elevator. "Mr. Whitmore is expecting you." The elevator ride was silent. Amir stared at the numbers as they climbed. 15, 16, 17. When it stopped, the doors opened to a quiet hallway, carpeted and calm. At the end, a glass door stood slightly open. Inside, Daniel waited. He was standing by a large window, looking out at the city. When he turned, his smile was the same as yesterday, warm, knowing. "I'm glad you came," Daniel said. Amir nodded but didn't step inside. Daniel noticed. "You can sit wherever you like. Or stand. No pressure. I just wanted to talk." "What is this place?" Amir asked softly, finally taking a step forward. Daniel gestured to the office. "This is just where I work. But what I want to show you, that goes beyond this room." He motioned to the chair across from his desk. Amir hesitated, then slowly sat down. "You probably have a lot of questions," Daniel said. "I do," Amir admitted. "I just don't know which one to ask first." Daniel reached into his drawer and pulled out the folded paper again. The same one he'd shown Amir the day before. He set it on the table between them. "This was given to me when I was 23, Daniel said quietly. "I was broke. Living out of my car. Hadn't spoken to my family in 2 years. No job. No purpose. I was about as lost as a man could be." Amir stared. "You?" Daniel nodded. "We all fall. Some of us harder than others. The world makes it easy to give up on people when they're down. But someone didn't give up on me. They gave me this instead." He tapped the folded paper. Amir reached for it slowly. Hands shaking, he opened it. The words weren't flashy. There weren't many. But they hit hard. "You are not your worst day. You are not your failures. You are what you choose next." Underneath the quote, there was a list. Short goals. Simple ones. Like eat a real meal. Help one person. Learn one new thing. Ask for help. "I followed that list for 30 days, Daniel said. Every day, even when I didn't believe in it. Especially then. And slowly, my life started to change." Amir looked up. "Why are you telling me this?" Daniel leaned forward. "Because I see in you what someone once saw in me. You think you're forgotten, but you're not. You think your story's over, but it isn't." There was a long silence between them. Then Daniel continued. "I've started something. Program. Quiet, under the radar. No red tape. No judgment. It's meant for people like you, people with stories, not labels. We help one person at a time. Food, shelter, job training, support. But only if they're ready." Amir swallowed hard. "And if I'm not? Then you walk out that door and I won't chase you. But something tells me you are ready, Amir. You just forgot how strong you really are." Amir looked down again at the paper, the list, the words. He didn't know why, but his eyes burned. He wiped at them quickly. "I don't know where to start," he whispered. Daniel smiled gently. "Start with one step." Outside that glass office, the world continued moving fast. But in that moment, in that room, time felt like it had slowed down just enough for something real to begin. What Amir didn't know was that his arrival had already sparked a chain reaction. People were watching. Quietly. Silently. Some with support. Some with doubt. Some who didn't want this second chance to succeed. Because Daniel's mission, it wasn't just about hope. It was about truth. And truth has a way of making enemies. But Amir didn't know that yet. All he knew was that something had shifted. And there was no turning back now. The following days moved like a blur for Amir. He was given a clean room in a small shared housing unit run by Daniel's foundation. A modest place, nothing fancy, but to Amir, it felt like stepping into another universe. Hot shower. Proper bed. Warm meals that didn't come from trash bins or shelters already overflowing with desperation. The small things hit hardest. Toothbrush. Clean socks. A towel that didn't smell like mildew. These weren't luxuries. They were lifelines. But with every comfort came a quiet weight Amir couldn't ignore. Why me? There were others in the program too. Some younger, some older. A woman named Rosa who had once worked as a schoolteacher before her life fell apart. A man named Kevin who'd done time and lost everything. They welcomed Amir like he'd always been part of their group, though everyone carried their own silent burdens. No one talked much about the past. Most of them only whispered about Daniel, how he seemed to know the right moment to appear, how he always saw through people's pain without prying. Amir listened more than he spoke. But he noticed things. The way people stiffened when a black car passed outside. How Rosa flinched when someone raised their voice. How Kevin stayed up at night pacing near the window like he was waiting for something, or someone. One evening, Daniel called Amir into his office again. Same window. Same calm smile. "I've been thinking about your story," Daniel said. "And I'd like you to help with something." Amir's brow furrowed. "Help? With what?" "There's a man, Elias Brandt. He used to sit where you did. 4 years ago. He was part of this same program. Found work, got back on his feet. But recently, something's wrong. He stopped showing up. No calls. No word. He disappeared." Amir shifted uncomfortably. "You think something happened to him?" "I'm not sure," Daniel said. "But he left behind a notebook. Pages torn out. And your name was written on one of the margins. Just once. No explanation." Amir stared. "He wrote my name." Daniel nodded slowly. "That's why I want you to come with me." The next morning they drove out of the city, past strip malls and housing developments, until the skyline faded behind them. The place they ended up was a forgotten edge of town, a long-abandoned textile mill, its windows broken and walls covered in faded graffiti. Daniel parked the car, looked at Amir and said, "I just need you to listen. Tell me if anything feels familiar." Inside the mill it was cold and damp. Footsteps echoed. Amir's eyes moved across the old beams, broken furniture and scattered debris. There were signs of recent activity. Empty cans, worn sleeping bags, cigarette butts. And then, something strange. A wall covered in newspaper clippings. Dozens of them. All tacked up with rusted nails or taped in crooked lines. Stories about missing people. Local corruption. Anonymous donations to homeless shelters. Old headlines dating back over a decade. But what froze Amir in place was a photo clipped near the center of the board. It was Daniel, younger, in a courtroom. The headline read, "Young finance prodigy walks free after scandal." Amir turned to him. "What is this?" Daniel didn't flinch. "My past. The part one don't usually talk about." Amir said nothing, waiting. "I was involved in a firm that exploited a lot of people," Daniel said quietly. "Families lost homes. Lives were destroyed. I wasn't the mastermind, but I didn't stop it. I saw the damage, and I stayed silent. When it all came crashing down, I walked away clean. Lawyers, influence, timing. It all worked in my favor. But I couldn't live with it. I tried to disappear. I ended up in the gutter. That's when I was given that paper." He pointed to his coat pocket, where the old folded list still lived. Amir looked back at the wall. "And this guy, Elias, he found out?" Daniel's eyes darkened. "I think Elias uncovered something deeper. Something still happening. He believed someone was using the program for something it was never meant for." Amir frowned. "Like what?" "I don't know yet," Daniel admitted. "But before he disappeared, he told someone he had evidence, and that he didn't know who to trust, not even me." A sharp wind blew through a crack in the broken window. Amir stared at the wall of names. Victims, patterns, people who vanished. Didn't make sense. But it didn't feel random either. Back at the housing unit, Amir couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him. It wasn't paranoia. It was a quiet, heavy presence. Like footsteps that always stayed just out of sight. One night, he found a small envelope slipped under his door. No return address. Inside was a photo, grainy black and white, of him sitting outside the gas station 2 months ago. On the back, a message was scrawled in jagged handwriting. "He's not who you think he is." The next morning, Amir didn't tell Daniel. He didn't tell anyone. He folded the photo and hid it deep in his coat. His mind swirled with questions. Was Daniel telling the truth? Had he really changed? Or was Elias right to be afraid? In the days that followed, Amir started noticing more. Whispers among the others in the program. Rosa quietly crying behind the vending machines. Kevin disappearing for hours at a time, then returning with cuts on his hands he wouldn't explain. A staff member, Monica, who never made eye contact with anyone. And strange men in suits who came to Daniel's office but never gave their names. The foundation, once a beacon of hope, now pulsed with unease. One evening, Amir slipped into the office when no one was watching. He wasn't proud of it, but he needed answers. The drawer Daniel always locked was slightly ajar. Inside were files, dozens of them, each marked with a name, each with notes, background checks, photos. Amir's file was near the top. He opened it with trembling fingers. Subject: Amir Nadim. Monitored since October. Potential risk level low. Observation recommended. He didn't breathe for a long moment. Monitored. He looked around, suddenly aware of how quiet the building had become. Just then a voice behind him. "You shouldn't be in here." He turned slowly. It wasn't Daniel. It was Monica, a quiet staff member. But her face was different now. Cold, serious. "Whatever you think you know," she said softly. "Be careful where you look. Not everyone here wants the truth out." Before Amir could respond, she turned and walked away, leaving the door open behind her. He stood frozen in the office, the file still in his hands, his heart pounding against his ribs. The lines between friend and enemy were blurring fast. And somewhere out there, Elias Brandt had left behind more than just a notebook. He had left behind a warning. Now it was Amir's turn to decide. Stay silent and survive. Or speak out and risk everything. But the truth. It was already closing in. Amir didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind outside his window set his nerves on edge. He kept the file tucked under his mattress, reading and rereading the notes in the dim glow of a borrowed flashlight. He tried to tell himself it meant nothing, that maybe the notes were just standard procedure for helping people in the program. But deep down he knew. Monitored. Potential risk level. Those weren't words you used to describe someone you were trying to save. They were words used for someone you were trying to control. The next morning, Daniel acted as if nothing had changed. He greeted Amir with the same warm smile, offered coffee, asked how he was settling in. But now every word felt rehearsed. Every gesture looked too polished. And Amir couldn't shake the memory of Monica's voice in the dark hallway. "Be careful where you look." Later that day, Rosa pulled Amir aside in the garden, her eyes darting nervously toward the cameras mounted high on the corners of the building. "You ever feel like this place isn't what it says it is?" she whispered, barely moving her lips. Amir looked at her. "You too." Rosa nodded. "I don't think we're just here to be helped. I think we're being watched. Tested, maybe." He thought about Elias, about the photo, about the names on the wall in that abandoned mill. Each piece of the puzzle was sharpening now, forming the outline of something larger, something dangerous. That night, Amir made a decision. He snuck out through the fire escape and headed back to the mill. He needed to see it again, to be sure he wasn't losing his mind. But when he got there, the place was burned out. Black soot. The walls still standing but barely. Someone had torched it. Recently. Amir stood there in the cold, staring at the charred remains. Then he noticed the smell, fresh gasoline. This wasn't an accident. Someone was covering tracks. And if they were willing to burn the evidence, what else were they willing to do? Suddenly, headlights lit up the back wall. A car had pulled up behind the ruins. Amir ducked behind the wreckage and watched as two men in dark suits stepped out, flashlights in hand. They didn't speak. They scanned the area, one of them holding what looked like a folder. When they walked off deeper into the building, Amir crept closer and caught a glimpse of something that made his blood run cold. The folder had his name on it. He backed away slowly, careful not to make a sound. His heartbeat thudded in his ears as he slipped into the shadows and vanished into the alley. The message was clear. He was no longer just part of the program. He was part of something else. Something that didn't want him asking questions. Back at the housing unit, he found Kevin waiting near the stairwell. "You weren't in your room," Kevin said, not asking a question. "I had to clear my head," Amir replied. Kevin looked at him for a long time, then finally said, "Elias came to me before he vanished. He thought this place was a front. Said Daniel's past never really went away, just changed its face." Amir's mouth was dry. "Then why are you still here?" Kevin lowered his voice. "Because I'm trying to find out who's behind it. And because someone has to finish what Elias started." Amir took a shaky breath. "I think they know. I think they're watching us." Kevin nodded. They always were. The next day the atmosphere shifted. Attention hung in the air. Monica was gone. No explanation. No goodbye. Daniel said she'd been transferred to another site, but something in his tone felt hollow. Rosa looked spooked. She avoided Amir's eyes. Even the staff seemed different. More alert, more cautious. That evening, Amir received a note slid under his door again. This one was typed. Simple, cold. "Stop digging. Last warning." No name. No signature. Just those 4 words. He crumpled the paper and stuffed it deep into his pocket. But the fear clung to him like smoke. He went to Kevin immediately. "We're running out of time," Amir said. "Whatever this is, it's closing in." Kevin was already packing a small bag. "Then we go tonight." As they moved quickly through the dark halls, staying clear of the cameras, Amir felt the weight of every step. One wrong move and they could disappear just like Elias. One slip, and this program that promised second chances could become a permanent prison. They slipped into the administrative wing, a place Kevin said held files that weren't supposed to exist. Behind a locked supply door was a hidden stairwell. It led down below ground. No one talked about the lower level. Most people didn't even know it was there. As they crept down the metal stairs, the air grew colder. The walls turned from drywall to concrete. And the silence grew loud. It wasn't just storage down here. It was something else. They found the room at the far end of the corridor. Heavy metal door with a keypad. Kevin had stolen a code weeks earlier. He punched it in, and with a low beep, the lock released. Inside were rows of shelves. Files. Hard drives. Boxes of labeled envelopes. And a monitor. Live camera feeds. Every room. Every hallway. Every face in the program. They weren't just being helped. They were being watched. Catalogued. Tracked. Amir stared at the screen. There he was, sitting in the garden. There was Rosa, curled in her bunk. Even the showers, blurred just enough to be legal, but invasive all the same. Kevin pulled a folder from one of the shelves. It was marked Project Refuge. Inside, pages of data. Background checks. Psychological evaluations. Handwritten notes. A section labeled Behavioral Response Triggers. "This isn't a shelter," Kevin whispered. "It's an experiment." Amir felt his stomach turn. Every act of kindness, every job offer, every smile from Daniel, all part of a system designed to test how far people like them could be pushed. Manipulated, broken down, rebuilt. And suddenly it all made sense. Elias disappearing. Monica vanishing. The fire. The threats. "Someone's coming," Kevin hissed. Footsteps echoed down the stairwell. They had minutes, maybe seconds. Amir grabbed the folder, clutching it to his chest. His heart was pounding so loud it drowned everything else. This was it. The moment everything would either collapse or come to light. And just before the door opened, the lights went out. The sudden darkness swallowed the room like a wave. Amir froze, clutching the stolen folder to his chest. His breath shallow. Kevin whispered something, but the words were lost in the soundless void that followed. The faint red glow of an emergency exit light blinked on behind them, casting long shadows over the shelves and metal cabinets. Somewhere up the stairs, a door creaked open, slow and deliberate. Heavy footsteps began to descend. One pair. Not running. Confident. Amir looked at Kevin, who silently pointed to a side door half hidden behind a tall filing cabinet. They slipped through it just before the main door burst open. From behind the cracked doorframe, Amir saw a man enter. Not a guard, not a staff member. It was Daniel. But his face, so often warm and open, was cold now, focused. He walked straight to the shelf where the Project Refuge files had been, opened a drawer and paused. His hand hovered over something, then he closed the drawer slowly, his expression unreadable. Kevin's mouth was inches from Amir's ear. He knew we'd come. Amir couldn't move, couldn't think. His mind raced through every moment he had trusted Daniel, every kind word, every late-night conversation, every encouragement to believe again. All of it now tangled in the realization that maybe none of it had ever been real. Or worse, it had all been part of the game. Daniel turned toward the monitor bank, where the screens were now blank. One by one he powered them down. Then he spoke out loud, not to anyone in the room, but it felt directed. "I told you," he said quietly. "There's a difference between saving people and managing them." And then he left. The moment the door clicked shut, Amir and Kevin slipped back into the main room. No alarms, no pursuit, just an eerie calm. The kind that follows a warning. The kind that meant they weren't running yet, because someone wanted them to stay. Wanted them to question every step, every thought. They escaped through the maintenance tunnel that connected to the lower alley. Kevin had found it during one of his night walks. By the time they emerged into the open air, dawn was creeping into the sky, painting the buildings in pale gold and gray. Amir's hands shook as he held onto the folder. Inside, the truth waited, but what they had seen already said enough. But just as they turned the corner to head back toward the safe house, a car screeched into the alley. A man stepped out. It wasn't Daniel. It was Elias. Older, thinner, eyes sunken and wild, but unmistakably alive. Amir stopped in his tracks, disbelief hitting him like a punch to the chest. "Elias," he breathed. The man looked at both of them, tense, eyes flicking to the folder in Amir's hands. "You shouldn't have come back," he said. "They let you see just enough." Kevin stepped forward. "We thought you were dead." "I almost was," Elias replied, voice hoarse. "I tried to expose them 4 years ago. Got as far as a journalist in D.C. Then she vanished. That's when I realized they don't just watch. They erase. I disappeared before they could finish what they started." He pulled out a small flash drive from his coat pocket. "This is what I've been building. Proof. Real proof. Funders. Video files. It's all here." Amir blinked. "Then why haven't you used it?" "Because I needed someone they wouldn't expect," Elias said. "Someone inside the program. Someone who still believed long enough to get close to Daniel." He looked at Amir directly. "You." Amir's stomach dropped. "You were watching me." "I had to. I didn't pick your name out of nowhere. Daniel marked you early. Said you had potential, said your loyalty could be shaped. But I saw something different. I saw someone who still had a conscience." The folder in Amir's hands now felt heavier, like it contained not just secrets but decisions. "What's really happening in that place?" Amir asked, voice barely steady. Elias glanced toward the rising sun. "It started as a real shelter years ago. Daniel was trying to make amends, I think. But then others got involved. Investors. People with money and motives. They wanted to turn recovery into data. Into prediction. Into control." Kevin narrowed his eyes. "You mean, like social engineering?" "Worse," Elias said. "They take the most vulnerable, people desperate enough to trust, and study their reactions. Track which messages work. Which triggers break them. It's not about helping. It's about testing control methods for things way beyond this program." Amir felt sick. Everything he'd believed in, the hope, the progress, the dignity, was just part of a simulation. A cold, calculated framework for manipulation. "What do they want from us now?" he asked. "They want silence," Elias said. "You were supposed to stop digging. That warning you got. means they're watching. They're waiting to see what you'll do next. If you make noise, they'll come for you. If you run, they'll erase you. Amir stared down at the folder. Then at the flash drive in Elias's hand. What if we don't run? He asked. Elias looked at him, and for the first time, something like respect flickered in his tired eyes. Then you'd better be ready for what comes next. Just then, the sound of tires turning in gravel echoed again. Another car was approaching from the other side of the alley. Kevin grabbed Amir's arm. We need to move. They ducked into an old service entry between two abandoned shops, slipping into darkness again. But this time it wasn't to hide. It was to plan. Because whatever they were facing, whoever was behind Daniel, it wasn't just about one shelter or one experiment anymore. This was bigger. And the people behind it. They were just getting started. The alley behind them fell silent, the engine's rumble fading into the distance. Amir's legs felt heavy, like the weight of every truth he'd uncovered was now pulling him into the ground. Kevin closed the service door behind them, locking it with a rusted bar. Inside the forgotten storage space, dim light poured through a cracked skylight, casting long, fractured shadows over stacks of broken furniture and dust-covered crates. Elias pulled out a small laptop from under his coat and plugged in the flash drive. The screen flickered to life, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. Amir leaned in, heart pounding as Elias opened folder after folder. Video files, emails, audio recordings. There was Daniel's voice, calm, persuasive, familiar, speaking with someone named Carter, a man with no public record but deep connections to tech firms and lobbying groups. The two men talked openly about the program, about the people inside it. They don't even need to know, Daniel's voice said through the tinny speaker. As long as the message is right, they'll believe they're being saved. It's behavioral design, we're not helping them. We're writing them. More files revealed financial transactions, blacked out names, offshore accounts, all pointing to a larger system that extended beyond the walls of the housing unit. Amir saw reports evaluating subject stability, resistance to influence, conversion potential. His own name came up again, this time in a transcript where someone had said, Amir's ideal, trusts easily, shows resilience, let's push him further. Amir stepped back, his stomach twisting. It was all real, every suspicion, every warning. We take this public, Kevin said. Press, social media, everything. They'll deny it, Elias said. They'll make us look like the unstable ones. Like we were bitter, angry, delusional. Then we show them the truth, Amir said, voice steady. By nightfall, they had the files uploaded to an encrypted cloud server. Elias reached out to a trusted journalist in Chicago who had once investigated similar social experiments overseas. She agreed to meet them off the grid. Handoff. Clean. Or so they hoped. The next evening, they met her in an old community center long since closed down. She was sharp, skeptical, but when Amir opened the laptop and showed her just one clip of Daniel admitting the program wasn't meant to save people but to test emotional vulnerability, her expression changed. This is going to burn, she whispered. But as she transferred the files onto her own drive, something strange happened. The power went out. Not just in the building but the entire block. Street lights died. Phones lost signal. Everything went black. Backups, Elias muttered. They're cutting the grid. They packed the equipment and slipped out through the back. But outside, a black SUV was already waiting at the curb. Kevin pushed Amir behind him. The driver's window rolled down slowly. It was Daniel. He looked tired. Not angry. Not afraid. Just tired. I told you, Daniel said. There's a difference between helping people and trying to fix them. We were never broken, Amir said, stepping forward. Daniel nodded. No, you weren't. Then something unexpected happened. He tossed a phone out the window. It slid across the pavement and stopped at Amir's feet. Open the news, Daniel said, then drove off without another word. Kevin picked up the phone. No passcode. They turned it on. A notification flashed. Whistleblower exposes secret behavioral experiment run under charity front. Breaking story. The journalist had already leaked it. The files were out. Amir stared at the screen. His picture was there. So was Elias. Headlines exploded across multiple outlets. Names were named. Sponsors exposed. Government officials scrambled to distance themselves. The program was finished. Or so they thought. Back at the housing unit, it was chaos. Investigators had arrived. Staff members were gone. Rosa had packed her things and disappeared. The shelter shut down overnight. The last person Amir saw before leaving was an older man sweeping the sidewalk out front. Someone Amir had passed every day without a word. That man looked up now, smiled gently and said, "You did what we couldn't." But the real twist came 2 weeks later. Amir got a letter. No return address. Inside was a single page, typed. "You were never the subject. You were the test." It hit him like a blow to the chest. The entire time, the program hadn't just been about studying behavior. It had been about seeing if someone like him, someone the world dismissed, could uncover the truth, resist influence, choose integrity over comfort. And they had watched him. Not just to control him, but to see if he would break. And he didn't. The world didn't collapse. But something did change. Amir was invited to speak, to share his story, not as a victim, but as a survivor. Voice. But even now, sometimes when he walks alone at night, he swears he sees a black SUV parked across the street, waiting. Not for revenge, but maybe for the next test. Amir stood on the small stage at the downtown community center, staring at the faces in front of him. Journalists, volunteers, students, a few familiar ones from the shelter, and many he'd never seen before. His hands were steady, but his voice carried the weight of everything he had lived through. He had been invited to speak not as a victim, not as a subject of an experiment, but as someone who had made a choice when it mattered most. The story of the secret program that had once used vulnerable people under the name of charity had become national news. And in the heart of it, Amir had found something he never thought possible, a voice. He looked down briefly at the card in his hand. The same card Daniel had given him that day outside the gas station. It was faded now, edges worn from being held and folded too many times. Daniel Whitmore Foundation. A symbol of hope and betrayal. Of beginnings and endings. "I was never meant to be noticed," Amir began. His voice even human. "I was the guy people crossed the street to avoid. The man with a sign, asking for a little kindness. But one day someone stopped. Someone said something I didn't expect. 'You're not invisible.' And from that moment, everything changed." He paused. Let it settle in. What I didn't know then was that I wasn't just being helped. I was being watched, measured, tested. My choices were tracked, my reactions documented. It was all part of something bigger, an experiment to see how people like me could be influenced, manipulated, controlled. But what they didn't expect was that some of us would choose to fight back. Applause filled the room, but Amir didn't flinch. He wasn't doing this for praise. He was doing it for the people still caught in silence. "In the middle of all of it," he continued, "I met others. People who had lost everything but not their dignity. Rosa, Kevin, Elias. We weren't perfect. We were tired, scared, confused. But we started asking questions. We stopped accepting easy answers. And that's when the truth started to crack through the surface. The shelter, now shut down, had become the subject of a government inquiry. Elias had testified anonymously, providing evidence that confirmed the program's true intentions. The funding behind the so-called rehabilitation center was traced to shadow organizations under the guise of behavioral research. It was legal, barely, but deeply unethical. Public outrage forced several political figures to step down. More importantly, new legislation had begun to take shape, focusing on the protection of vulnerable communities from exploitation under the label of support. Kevin had gone on to start his own outreach group, working with former inmates and displaced veterans. Rosa had found a job at a public library where she ran a reading circle for women starting over. Elias, ever the ghost in the background, chose to disappear once again. He sent Amir a single message. You finished the story, I couldn't. But the question that stayed with Amir the most was Daniel. After the footage leaked and the scandal unraveled, Daniel Whitmore vanished. No public statements. No apology. No charges. It was as if the man who had started it all had walked off the edge of the world. Some said he was in Europe. Others claimed he had turned whistleblower himself and handed over even more information in secret. No one really knew. But Amir believed something else. He believed Daniel had planned it. Not all of it, but enough. Like he wanted to see what would happen if someone pushed back. Maybe he had grown tired of playing God and wanted someone, anyone, to stop him. Or maybe he was always 2 steps ahead, watching from the shadows, still testing, still waiting, still running the program. That thought used to haunt Amir. But not anymore. Now he used it as fuel. After the speech, people came up to him. Some to shake his hand, others to thank him for speaking out. A few admitted they had once passed people like him on the street and looked the other way. It wasn't guilt in their voices. It was something else. Awareness. Oh. Outside, the air was warm with early summer. Amir stood under the street lamp, the hum of the city all around him. He could see the shelter building in the distance, boarded up, forgotten, but not gone. The memories there were etched into him. Every lie, every conversation, every small act of kindness that now felt tainted, but also real. Because for all the manipulation, not everything had been fake. Some of it had been genuine. People. Bonds. The small decisions that led to something bigger. He thought about the phrase on the paper Daniel had given him all those weeks ago. The one that started it all. You are not your worst day. You are what you choose next. It was the only part of the program that had felt real from the beginning. The only line that still echoed with meaning. Amir walked toward the subway station. He had places to be now. Schedule. Meetings. He was helping organize a new shelter. One that actually protected people, not watched them. No cameras. No tests. Just meals. Safety. As he reached the top of the steps, he paused. Across the street, parked half in shadow, was a black SUV. Not moving. No visible driver. The windows tinted too dark to see through. Amir didn't flinch. He looked directly at it, then turned and headed down the stairs. If someone was still watching, let them watch. He wasn't hiding anymore. He had already passed the test. And now he was writing his own program. One built not on control but compassion. Not on silence but voice. Not on manipulation but truth. Because real change didn't start with systems. It started with people. With a moment of eye contact. With someone stopping on the street and asking, "What's your name?" And with one man who once held a sign that said anything helps, finally holding something else instead. Purpose.